Let's go! What a day! Myles Brennan is returning, and we get some other news that I think is really good for LSU as well. Myles Brennan has decided to return for his final season, or does he have 2 years of eligibility left? It's impossible to really tell, but obviously comment down below. I'm going to need your help on this, guys. Is this the Myles Brennan show? Will he be the starter for LSU next season? So let's start with, obviously, Brian Kelly, okay? This was Brian Kelly's first big recruit. Walker Howard was going to come to LSU, as were all those other names that you saw signed yesterday. Those were guys that really wanted to be at LSU, right? Myles Brennan didn't. According to Garland Gillen, Myles was seriously interested to going somewhere else, and it took a phone call from Brian Kelly to Myles Brennan to say, look, we understand that you want to go elsewhere so you can make sure that you play. And, well, Myles Brennan reconsidered and decided to come back. So this was Brian Kelly's first big move. I have to give him a lot of credit on this one. And this is probably 99% him getting Myles to come back. Because if you were Myles Brennan, this decision is not an easy decision. You don't know if you have 1 or 2 years left of eligibility. That's in the hands of the NCAA. We won't go too deep into that. And if you get beat out, your career could be over. Myles could have gone to some random ACC or non-Power 5 school and put up a ton of numbers, but he decided to come back to a very talented quarterback room with Garrett, Nussmeier, and Walker Howard. There is a major red flag, and it makes it a risk when it comes to Myles Brennan. The injuries. Some guys' bodies just aren't built to play football, and sometimes guys just can't stay healthy, and for Myles Brennan, that's been the case. The Missouri injury was very interesting because it was such a rare injury to where doctors wanted to name whatever happened to Myles's ribs and body. They wanted to name the injury after Myles Brennan. So obviously he rehabbed from that. He plays in the spring game, and he's ready to go for 2020, only for him to have this off-field incident happen. Your best ability is availability, and the bottom line is you can't rely on Myles Brennan to stay fully healthy. So once again, I'm a big Myles guy, but still, that is a major red flag. But of course, we expect him to be healthy, and we expect him to be in the best shape of his life because this is his absolute last chance. We focused mostly on what he did in 2020, where he was very impressive. Now, the Mississippi State game had some real rough spots, some normal mistakes. We've done a lot of film studies on that game. He made some mistakes that a lot of first-time starters make, such as not deciding to tuck and run, such as some late throws, some bad missed throws. He missed Ray Jenkins a lot in that game. So that was his first start, but the other two starts obviously were really impressive, okay? So once again, one of those games was against Vanderbilt, so take that for what it's worth. Vanderbilt was one of the worst SEC teams ever in 2020, but he still lit them up. And I remember in that game, he specifically worked on some things that, well, he needed to work on, and I got to give Myles Brennan a lot of credit. The things that he messed up against versus Mississippi State, he fixed, such as stepping up in the pocket, throwing on time, making sharper reads. He did that versus Vanderbilt. And then against Missouri, that was obviously one of the best games any SEC quarterback played because he had no help from his defense, and he really had to carry us. And look, his numbers in that game were nothing short of incredible. It did help that he had a fully healthy and locked in Eric Gilbert and Terrace Marshall to throw to, but still it doesn't take away how phenomenal, how accurate he was in that game. He even made some throws on the run, but at the same time, he also tore his ribs up in that game early, still played through it, but then that was the end of Myles Brennan. So it showed you his toughness. It also at the same time showed you how brittle Myles Brennan can be. So if he is fully healthy and ready to go, he is probably going to be LSU's guy next year. Now, what does that do for Walker Howard, and what does that do for Garrett Nussmeier? Well, I've been told this from some recruiting sources that Brian Kelly let it be pretty clearly known to Walker Howard that he was going to find a portal quarterback. I mean, how many true freshman starters go into any elite program and turn out to be the guy day one? It's very rare. So if you're Walker Howard, you know that going in, and Myles Brennan's probably going to be a one-year guy and try his chance at the NFL. The guy, obviously, that I think I feel really bad for is Garrett Nussmeier. Once again, this whole redshirting thing was nonsense from the get-go. It doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. He should have just played these final games and tried to win the starter's job. But now without playing, and really only the Arkansas game as tape of playing competitive snaps, well, you know, it kind of leaves a sour taste in his mouth, right? It kind of keeps a sour taste in our mouths because obviously Garrett Nussmeier is better than what he showed in that Arkansas game. But for whatever reason, we decided to redshirt him when there's plenty of other years for him to make up that year of eligibility. And I cannot state this enough. The goodwill that Max Johnson built up in his 2-0 ending to 2020 really propelled him to 2021 being the guy. And to me, Garrett Nussmeier is a competitor. He wants to start. He wants to be the guy. Why didn't they just let this kid play? Just let this kid play. If I'm Garrett Nussmeier, I'm going to Brian Kelly and saying, look, I'm getting this starter's job. I'm the guy for the bowl game, and I'm going to show you why I deserve to be the starter next year. Some other good news, obviously, Myles Frazier, the number one offensive lineman target for LSU in the portal, and this guy can really play. He was a true freshman All-American, and he had 34 schools after him. So the first thing I got to say about Myles Frazier is that this dude had swag surf as his announcement video music, right? I can't play it, but these youngins still loving swag surf makes me feel pretty good about our future as a country and as a society, because swag surf is like the greatest college football and just college sports song. I know Auburn has butchered it, but still, that means Myles Frazier is a real deal at LSU. Look, there's no other way around it. For those that don't know a whole lot about Myles Frazier, in full disclosure, I haven't been able to watch a whole lot of his film. I thought this wasn't going to happen. I thought for sure he was going to go and stay in state and go to Florida State, but no. LSU beats out Florida State and Ohio State to get Myles Frazier. First thing, you got to give Brad Davis a lot of credit. I've been telling you guys for months now, Brad Davis is a really special human being and a very special coach, and we're very lucky to have him. Now, there's going to be a transition period. Obviously, playing at FIU is different than playing at LSU, but the bottom line is that this is just really good stuff right here from Brad. And look, the LSU offensive line depth just isn't really that great right now. Obviously, fingers crossed that Marcus Dumerville and Cardell Thomas, both of which have played a lot over the past couple of weeks, takes that next step. Also, the same thing can be said about Garrett Dellinger. Maybe one of those three tries out at center. I guess Dellinger would be the best option there. But, yeah, I mean, that's going to be the first thing. Can LSU find a center? Maybe that's Emory Jones, who, as many of you know, is my number one player in the 2022 cycle for LSU. But still, we'll see. This is obviously huge, though. And you can make a case that, you know, of course, Myles Brennan plays the most important position in football, and that's true. But you can make a case that the biggest need outside of the transfer portal quarterback position was getting Myles Frazier and getting another offensive lineman. I don't think LSU's going to be done in the portal when it comes to offensive linemen. I think they're going to try and get a few more. Obviously, there are some other positions that need to get addressed, including linebacker and defensive back, but this is undoubtedly huge for LSU. And we end with some sad news here that Trey Palmer has entered the transfer portal. And I know you've heard me say this plenty of times. This is good for not only LSU, but it's better for Trey. Look, at wide receiver, in order for you to get to the next level and in order really for you to be fulfilled as a player, you got to get targets, right? You got to play, right? There's 4 wide receivers more often than not on the field. Well, 3. There's always going to be 3 or more wide receivers, especially if you're going to play a lot of 11 personnel, which is what a lot of teams do play. And the thing is, if you're not in the top 5 in your own wide receiver rotation, and you're on a team that runs a lot of 11 personnel, which is 1 tight end, 1 running back, 3 wide receivers, you're going to need to find somewhere else to play. And Trey Palmer was the 6th wide receiver in the rotation going into next season. Kayshawn's going to be back. Obviously, the big 3 freshmen, BTJ, Besh, and Neighbors are coming back. Chris Hilton's going to be fully healthy, but really Jeray Jenkins is that 5th guy behind those top 4. And you know, if you're Trey Palmer, you're looking at a situation here where you're number 6 or number 7. So the first thing, it's a good thing for LSU because their wide receiver rotation was far too big these last couple of seasons, to the point where I didn't really know what Mickey Joseph and the offensive play callers were thinking, having such a wide receiver rotation, which goes counter to what we did in 2019 when our rotation was extremely tight with Justin, Jamar, and Terrace. Boom. So that's why this is a good thing, because Trey can go somewhere and be the number 1 or number 2 guy and get a ton of targets and still make the NFL. We saw Trey Quinn and Tyron Johnson do that, and they still made the league. So it's not out of the question that a top-end recruit, which Trey Palmer was, turns out to be better off somewhere else, and the same thing is true for LSU. Wide receiver's a weird position, right? You got to go to where you can get targets. And the crazy thing about it is Trey Palmer's not even the most talented receiver to have transferred from LSU in recent weeks. Of course, Deion Smith also packed his bags, and I think he is going to be special wherever he ends up. So I hope that is outside the SEC, even though Ole Miss looks likely at this point. And Coy Moore is also really talented. He also transferred. So that's the thing. If you're going to play wide receiver at LSU, it is really, really hard to be in the rotation, and then not only be in the rotation, but also get targets. Now, of course, there's so much more we got to talk about involving Myles freaking Brennan. I'm so freaking excited about this, so we're going to cut this short. I had a few other Myles things that I cut out. I will say this, you guys saw a little bit earlier, there are hundreds of film studies that we have done on Myles, so I'm excited to do even more of those during this offseason. Now, as many of you know, we're getting ready to chat with Jeremy L in just a moment. And if you're watching this on a replay or down the road, guess what? You could still check it out. The link will be down below. Okay? Got a lot of fun stuff heading up on this channel. Great day to be an LSU Tiger. Not only getting the Walker Howard class, which is just going to be so good. Also getting just a wonderful day of news here. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom. That's going to be a crazy, man, the Nuss. It's going to be kind of wild, right? Nuss, Walker, and Myles. Man, honestly, comment down below. Do you for sure think Myles is going to be the guy? I know some of you just think Walker should start next year or Nuss should start next year. Just let me know what you guys think, because it is an interesting conversation to be had. And what is that? Something just flew in my mouth. That was kind of awkward. All right, we're doing pork chops tonight. Let's